Min-ho sat calmly in his wheelchair, observing the controlled chaos of Eclipse Lounge with the detached interest of a man who'd seen it all before. Crystal glasses clinked, expensive perfume mixed with cigar smoke, and Seoul's most dangerous players conducted business disguised as celebration. At 40 years old, Kang Min-ho ruled this world from his throne of Italian leather and chrome, untouchable and unmoved. Then suddenly he was moving, not by his own choice. Someone had grabbed the handles of his wheelchair and was pushing him forward with surprising strength. "Excuse me, gentlemen. Let me borrow him." The voice was female, American accented, and filled with wild confidence that cut through the nightclub noise like a blade. Min-ho's body went rigid with shock as his wheelchair rolled rapidly toward the stage, weaving between tables with reckless speed. His bodyguards reacted instantly. Jin-woo lunged forward, hand reaching for the weapon concealed beneath his jacket. Two other guards flanked them, faces dark with fury. No one touched the boss. Ever. "Stop," one guard barked in English, his hand closing around the woman's wrist. But she didn't stop. She spun Min-ho's wheelchair in a smooth arc that put him facing the stage, and for the first time, he saw her clearly. She was tall, dark-skinned, wearing a silver dress that caught the stage lights like water, and her eyes held absolutely no fear. None. She looked at his armed guards the way someone might regard annoying insects, more inconvenience than threat. "I said excuse me," she repeated, pulling her wrist free with a twist that made Jin-woo's eyes widen. She'd broken a combat hold like it was nothing. "I need to borrow him for 3 minutes. You can kill me after if you want, but right now this man needs to dance." The entire lounge had gone silent. Conversations died mid-sentence. Deals froze mid-negotiation. Every eye in the room fixed on the unthinkable scene unfolding before them, a foreign woman manhandling Kang Min-ho like he was a shopping cart. Min-ho should have been furious. Should have given the signal that would end this woman's life before she took another breath. But shock had frozen him as completely as the bullet that shattered his spine 12 years ago. His mind struggled to process what was happening because things like this simply didn't happen. Not to him. Not ever. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Jin-woo's voice was deadly quiet, the tone that usually preceded violence. The woman ignored him completely. She positioned Min-ho's wheelchair at the edge of the stage, locked the brakes with efficient movements that suggested familiarity with the equipment, and then walked around to face him directly. Up close, she was breathtaking. High cheekbones, full lips curved in a smile that was somehow both apologetic and completely unapologetic, and eyes that held a kind of reckless determination he recognized because he'd once possessed to himself. "I'm Eliana," she said, extending her hand to him. "And you've been sitting in the shadows looking miserable for 2 hours. So, I'm going to do something about it." "You're insane." Min-ho finally found his voice, cold and sharp. "Do you have any idea who I am?" "The guy who owns this place, according to the nervous manager who tried to warn me away from you." Eliana's smile widened. "Also apparently someone very important and very dangerous. But right now you're just a man who forgot how to live, and that's something I actually know how to fix." Jin-woo moved closer, murder in his eyes. "Boss, say the word." "Don't." Min-ho surprised himself with the command. His heart was pounding, adrenaline flooding his system in a way it hadn't in years. This woman was either supremely brave or catastrophically stupid, and he needed to know which. Everyone stepped back. His guards hesitated, confusion crossing their faces. They'd been trained to protect him from exactly this kind of unpredictable chaos. But they also knew better than to question a direct order. Slowly, reluctantly, they retreated several steps. Eliana's smile became something softer, more genuine. "Thank you. Now, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to really think about your answer before you say no." "I'm already regretting not having you shot," Min-ho said, but there was no real heat in it. He was too fascinated by this bizarre turn of events. "Fair enough. She took a breath, and her expression became serious, almost vulnerable. When was the last time you felt alive? Not powerful, not in control, not feared. Actually alive. The question hit him like a physical blow. Min-ho opened his mouth to deliver a cutting response, but no words came. Because the answer was 12 years ago, on a dance floor in Hongdae, moving to music that made his blood sing, 3 hours before a bullet ended everything. Eliana must have seen the answer in his face, because she nodded slowly. That's what I thought. Me too. I came to Seoul running from a life that was killing me slowly, and for 3 months I've been going through the motions, performing but not feeling. Then tonight, I saw you watching my earlier set, and you were the only person in this entire room who actually understood what I was doing up there. You don't know anything about me, Min-ho said, but his voice had lost its edge. I know you're in a wheelchair, and I know that doesn't define you, but you've let it cage you anyway. She gestured around the lounge. All this power, all these people afraid of you, and you're the loneliest person here. I can see it because I recognize it. We're the same, you and me. We're both hiding from something that hurt us too much to face. The accuracy of her words was terrifying. Min-ho had spent 12 years building walls, creating distance, turning himself into something cold and untouchable so the pain couldn't reach him. And this stranger had taken one look and seen through everything. What do you want from me? He asked quietly. Dance with me, Eliana said simply. Min-ho almost laughed. The absurdity of it, the sheer impossibility. I can't dance. I haven't been able to walk in 12 years. I didn't ask you to walk. I asked you to dance. She extended both hands to him now, palms up, an offering rather than a demand. Dancing isn't about legs. It's about letting the music move through you, wherever you are, however you are. Trust me. Please. Around them, the lounge remained frozen in stunned silence. Min-ho could feel hundreds of eyes watching, could sense Park Tae-sung in his corner booth practically salivating at this display of weakness. This moment would spread through Seoul's underworld like wildfire. The great Kang Min-ho, manipulated by a foreign dancer. His reputation would take a hit that might never fully recover. He should refuse. Should have her dragged away. Should retreat to his penthouse and forget this ever happened. But something in her eyes, that mixture of understanding and hope and shared pain, called to a part of him he'd buried so deep he'd forgotten it existed. Min-ho took her hands. The contact sent electricity through his arms. Her skin was warm, her grip strong but gentle, and when her smile blazed like sunrise, something in his frozen chest cracked. There we go, Eliana said softly. Now, come with me. Before he could process what was happening, she released the wheelchair brake and guided him up the ramp onto the stage. The spotlight found them immediately, bathing them in white light that made the watching crowd fade into shadow. Wait, Min-ho started, genuine alarm rising in his chest. Being watched from his private section was one thing. Being on display like this was something else entirely. But Eliana was already moving. She positioned herself in front of him as music began to play, something slow and soulful that resonated in his chest. She began to sway, her movement subtle at first, just a rocking motion that drew the eye. Feel the music, she said quietly. Not with your legs. With everything else. Your heart. Your soul. Your arms. She took his hands again and began to guide them, creating flowing patterns in the air that matched the rhythm. Min-ho felt exposed, vulnerable, every instinct screaming at him to retreat. But her eyes held his, steady and encouraging, and something in her absolute certainty made him surrender to the moment. His shoulders began to move, rolling with the beat. His arms, guided by Eliana but increasingly following their own impulse, traced patterns that felt almost familiar. The music sank into his bones the way it used to, back when dancing was escape and freedom and joy. Eliana spun away from him, her dress catching the light, then returned. She danced around his wheelchair with it, making it part of the performance rather than an obstacle. And Min-ho found himself responding, his upper body swaying, his hands moving through the air with growing confidence. Yes, Eliana breathed, her eyes shining. That's it. You remember. I knew you would. The music swelled, building intensity, and Eliana's movements became more passionate. She was telling a story with her body, something about loss and hope and the courage to try again. Min-ho understood because he was living it right here, right now. Then something impossible happened. A tingling sensation spread through Min-ho's legs, faint but unmistakable. He'd felt phantom sensations before, nerve echoes that meant nothing, but this was different. This was real. His fingers tightened on the wheelchair arms. Wait, he gasped. Eliana stopped mid-movement, concern flashing across her face. What's wrong? My legs, Min-ho said, his voice strange even to his own ears. I can feel my legs. The lounge went deathly silent. Jin-woo stepped forward, his face pale. Boss. Min-ho didn't answer. He was focused entirely on the sensation spreading through his lower body, nerves firing that hadn't communicated in 12 years. It was impossible. 3 different specialists had confirmed the damage was permanent. Complete spinal cord severance. No hope of recovery. But the tingling was becoming stronger, becoming pressure, becoming something that felt almost like muscle control. Don't move, Jin-woo commanded, pulling out his phone. I'm calling your doctor. No, Min-ho's hands moved to the wheelchair arms, gripping hard. His heart was pounding so violently, he thought it might explode. No doctors. Eliana knelt beside the wheelchair, her eyes wide. What are you feeling?
Talk to me.
I don't know, Min-ho admitted, and heard the tremor in his voice. Fear and hope warred inside him, both terrifying. It's like waking up. Like my legs are remembering how to exist. Can you move them? Min-ho focused, sending the mental command that had failed for 12 years.
Move.
Please God, move. His right foot twitched. The sound that came from Jin-woo was something between a gasp and a prayer. Several people in the crowd had noticed something was happening, whispers starting to spread. Again, Eliana encouraged, her hand covering his. Whatever you just did, do it again. Min-ho tried, sweat breaking out across his forehead from the effort. His foot moved again, more definitely this time. Then his calf muscle flexed. Then his knee bent, just slightly but bent. Oh my God, Eliana whispered. Oh my God, you're doing it. I can't be, Min-ho said, but even as he spoke, more sensation returned. The pressure of the footrest against his soles. The fabric of his pants against his shins. 12 years of numbness retreating like ice melting in spring. His legs were waking up. Boss, you need medical attention, Jin-woo insisted, but his voice held wonder instead of authority. This isn't possible. Min-ho wasn't listening. His entire world had narrowed to the miracle happening in his body. With trembling hands, he gripped the wheelchair arms harder and tried to push himself up. Wait, don't, Eliana started, reaching for him. But Min-ho was beyond caution. 12 years. 12 years of being trapped, of being less than whole, of watching the world move while he remained still. If there was even a chance, even the smallest possibility, he had to try. He pushed. His legs shook violently, muscles that had atrophied screaming in protest. For a second, nothing happened. Then, slowly, impossibly, his body began to rise from the wheelchair. The lounge erupted in gasps and shouts. Someone screamed. But Min-ho heard none of it. His entire focus was on the monumental task of standing, of demanding his body obey after 12 years of silence. His legs threatened to buckle. Eliana was there instantly, her arm around his waist, supporting him. I've got you, she said urgently. I've got you. Don't push too hard. But Min-ho was standing. Actually standing. His legs trembled like a newborn calf's, threatening to collapse at any second, but they were holding his weight. He was vertical for the first time in 12 years. Tears streamed down his face, hot and shameless. He couldn't speak, couldn't think, could barely breathe. The impossibility of it threatened to overwhelm him. "You're standing," Eliana said, and her voice was thick with emotion too. "Min-ho, you're standing." He looked at her, this impossible woman who'd stormed into his life and shattered everything he thought he knew.
How?
"I don't know," she admitted, her arms steady around him. "But you are. You're doing it." His legs shook harder. He wouldn't be able to hold this position much longer. But before he collapsed back into the wheelchair, Min-ho needed to do one thing. One thing he'd dreamed about for 12 years. "The music," he gasped. "Start the music again." Eliana's eyes widened with understanding. She called to someone off stage. "Play it. Play the song." The music swelled again, filling the stage, filling the lounge, filling Min-ho's chest with something that felt dangerously close to hope. And with Eliana supporting him, her body pressed against his to keep him upright, Min-ho took a step. His right leg moved forward, dragging slightly, but moving. Then his left. Each step was agony and ecstasy, his muscles screaming, his nerves firing in patterns they'd forgotten. But he was walking. Actually walking. "That's it," Eliana encouraged, moving with him, bearing part of his weight, but letting him lead. "One step at a time. You're doing it. You're dancing." They moved together across the stage, slow and halting and completely imperfect. But they were moving. Min-ho was dancing for the first time in 12 years, and it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever experienced. The lounge had erupted in chaos. People were standing, shouting, phones out recording every second. Jin-woo was barking orders into his phone, probably calling every doctor in Seoul. But Min-ho heard none of it. He heard only the music and Eliana's voice. "A little more," she said softly. "You can do a little more." Min-ho turned, using Eliana as his anchor, and they completed a slow circle on the stage. His vision blurred with tears, his body trembled with exhaustion, but he was dancing. After 12 years of darkness, he was dancing. The music reached its peak, and Min-ho's legs finally gave out. He collapsed, and Eliana went down with him, both of them ending up on the stage floor in a tangle of limbs. For a moment, they just stared at each other, both breathing hard, both in shock. Then Min-ho started to laugh. It came from somewhere deep inside, genuine and uncontrolled, the kind of laughter he hadn't experienced since before the bullet. Eliana joined him, their laughter mixing with tears, with disbelief, with pure overwhelming joy. "You danced," she said, her hand cupping his face. "You actually danced." "I danced," Min-ho repeated, tasting the words like wine. "I stood up and I danced." The stage was suddenly crowded with people. Jin-woo reached them first, his face a mask of concern and wonder. "Boss, we need to get you to a hospital. This is medically impossible. You need to be examined." Later, Min-ho said, unable to stop smiling even as his body shook with exhaustion. "Later. Right now, I just want to—" He looked at Eliana, this wild, impossible woman who'd grabbed his wheelchair and changed his life in the span of a song. "Thank you," he said simply, the words inadequate for what he felt. Eliana's smile was radiant. "Thank you for trusting me, for being brave enough to try." Around them, Eclipse Lounge remained in chaos. The news was already spreading through Seoul's underworld. Kang Min-ho, who hadn't walked in 12 years, had stood up and danced with a foreign performer. It would be the talk of the city by morning. But Min-ho didn't care about any of that. His legs had already gone numb again, the sensation fading as mysteriously as it had appeared. The doctors would probably say it was a temporary muscle spasm, a neurological anomaly, meaningless and unrepeatable. But Min-ho knew better. Something had happened on that stage, something that transcended medical explanation. Eliana had reached into his darkness and pulled him into light, if only for a moment. Before we continue, please click the subscribe button, like this video, and leave a comment. This lets us know you're following the story. And even if he never walked again, even if it was a one-time miracle never to be repeated, it had been worth it. To feel alive again, to dance again, to remember what it meant to be human instead of just powerful. "We should go," Jin-woo said urgently. This has attracted too much attention. He was right. Min-ho could see Park Tae-sung pushing through the crowd, his face twisted with something between rage and fear. This moment of vulnerability, witnessed by hundreds, had just painted a target on Min-ho's back. But as his guards helped him back into the wheelchair, as the reality of his situation reasserted itself, Min-ho couldn't bring himself to regret what had happened. He looked at Eliana one more time. "Will you come see me? Tomorrow?" "Try to stop me," she replied, her hand squeezing his briefly before the guards ushered him away. As the wheelchair carried him through the parting crowd toward the private exit, Min-ho felt something he hadn't experienced in 12 long years. Hope. The ride back to Min-ho's penthouse passed in a blur of Jin-woo's urgent phone calls and the hum of the Mercedes engine. Min-ho sat in silence, his hands trembling in his lap, unable to process what had just happened. His legs were numb again, completely unresponsive, as if the last 10 minutes had been a vivid hallucination. But the ache in his muscles was real. The tear tracks on his face were real. And the feeling of Eliana's body supporting his weight as he took those impossible steps was seared into his memory like a brand. "The doctors will meet us at your apartment in 20 minutes, Jin-woo said, ending another call. His voice was tight with concern. "Boss, I need to know what happened back there. You've seen specialists all over the world. They all said." "I know what they said." Min-ho cut him off, his voice rough. "I was there for every diagnosis, every test, every time they told me to accept that I'd never walk again." "Then how?" Jin-woo's usual composure was cracking. They'd been friends since childhood, long before the Empire, before the shooting, before everything went dark. "How did you stand? How did you walk?" "I don't know." Min-ho turned to stare out the tinted window at Seoul's glittering streets. People walked on sidewalks, their movements casual and thoughtless, taking for granted the miracle of functioning legs. The music started, and I felt something, like electricity running through my spine. Then my legs just woke up. "That's impossible." "I know."
Min-ho's yaw tightened.
"But it happened. You saw it. Everyone saw it." Jin-woo was quiet for a long moment. "The phone's boss. At least 50 people recorded what happened. By morning, it'll be everywhere. Your rivals will know. Park Tae-sung will know. They'll see it as weakness, as vulnerability. Let them." Min-ho surprised himself with the words. Normally, he would have already been planning damage control, crafting the narrative, eliminating any witnesses who might use the information against him. But right now, he couldn't bring himself to care about strategy and power plays. He'd danced. After 12 years in darkness, he'd felt light again. "With respect, boss, you can't just let them. Tae-sung has been looking for an opening for months. This gives him ammunition. He'll claim you're compromised, unstable. He'll use tonight to turn your allies against you. Then I'll handle it when it comes." Min-ho's voice hardened slightly. "Right now, I need to understand what happened to my body. Everything else can wait." The Mercedes pulled into the underground garage of Min-ho's building, a luxury high-rise in Gangnam that he owned through layers of corporate shells. The elevator ride to the penthouse was silent, both men lost in their own thoughts. Min-ho's apartment was a study in minimalist luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul, designer furniture in blacks and grays, everything perfectly arranged and perfectly cold. It had never felt like a home, just an elevated version of the cage his life had become. Tonight, it felt even more suffocating than usual. The doctors arrived exactly 20 minutes later, two of them, both looking nervous. Dr. Kim had been Min-ho's primary physician for 8 years, a skilled neurologist who understood the unique requirements of treating a patient who could have him killed with a word. Dr. Park was younger, a specialist in spinal cord injuries who'd consulted on Min-ho's case multiple times. Mr. Kang, Dr. Kim said with a bow. Jin-woo told us what happened. We like to run some tests immediately. Min-ho nodded toward his bedroom. Make it quick. The examination took 40 minutes. They tested his reflexes, ran electrical stimulation through his legs, checked his spinal alignment, performed every diagnostic procedure they could without hospital equipment. Through it all, Min-ho stared at the ceiling, remembering what it had felt like to stand, to move, to dance. Finally, Dr. Kim stepped back, his expression troubled. Mr. Kang, I'm seeing some unusual activity in your lower spinal nerves. Not much, but more than should be possible given the extent of your original injury. However, your legs are currently showing no voluntary movement. Whatever happened earlier appears to have been temporary. Can it happen again? Min-ho asked. The doctors exchanged glances. Dr. Park spoke carefully. In theory, no. Your spinal cord damage was catastrophic. Complete severance at the L1 vertebra. There's no medical explanation for what you described experiencing tonight. But it did happen, Min-ho said flatly. I stood. I walked. Hundreds of people witnessed it. I'm not questioning what you experienced, Dr. Park said quickly. I'm saying I can't explain it. Perhaps it was a temporary neurological event, an adrenaline response that briefly overrode the damage. Perhaps the original injury wasn't as complete as we thought, though every scan contradicts that. Or perhaps, he hesitated. Perhaps what? Perhaps there are aspects of the human nervous system we don't fully understand yet. Trauma, emotion, psychological factors. There have been documented cases of people performing impossible physical feats under extreme stress or emotional duress. So, you're saying it was all in my head? Min-ho's voice went cold.
No, sir.
I'm saying the mind and body are more connected than we often acknowledge. Whatever happened tonight, whether it can happen again depends on factors we can't measure or predict. Dr. Kim cleared his throat. We'd like to schedule an MRI for tomorrow, run more comprehensive tests. And I'd recommend staying in the wheelchair for now. If you try to stand without support and fall, you could cause further injury.
Fine.
Schedule it. Min-ho dismissed them with a wave. Leave the reports with Jin-woo. After the doctors left, Jin-woo poured them both drinks, expensive whiskey in crystal glasses. He handed one to Min-ho and took the seat across from him. So, what now? Jin-woo asked. Now I find out if it was a one-time miracle or something more. Min-ho took a long drink. And I talked to Eliana. About her. Jin-woo's expression grew serious. I ran a deeper background check while you were with the doctors. She's clean, like I said before, but there are some gaps. 3 months ago, she left Atlanta abruptly, broke off an engagement to some finance guy, quit a prestigious position with a major dance company, and was on a plane to Seoul within 48 hours. People run from things, Min-ho said quietly. I can't judge her for that. Boss, with respect, you can't afford to be careless right now. This woman shows up out of nowhere, touches you, and suddenly you're experiencing impossible medical events. It's suspicious. You think she's what? A spy? An assassin with magic healing powers. Min-ho's tone was sarcastic, but Jin-woo didn't smile. I think she's an unknown variable in a very dangerous equation. Tonight proved you have feelings for her, whether you admit it or not. And feelings make you vulnerable. Min-ho stared into his glass. Jin-woo wasn't wrong. In their world, emotional attachments were weaknesses to be exploited. He'd seen it happen countless times. A man's love for his family used against him. A woman's affection turned into a weapon. Caring about someone meant giving your enemies a target. But after 12 years of feeling nothing, of existing in a cold gray void where power was the only currency that mattered. The thought of cutting Eliana out of his life before he even understood what she'd awakened in him felt unbearable. "I'll be careful," Min-ho said finally. "But I'm seeing her tomorrow." "That's not negotiable." Jin-woo sighed but nodded. "Then, at least let me increase your security. And we need to deal with the fallout from tonight." The videos are already trending on social media. People are calling it a miracle, a hoax, everything in between. Let them talk. Schedule a meeting with the family heads for next week. I'll address their concerns directly. And Taesung. Min-ho's expression hardened. Park Taesung had been a thorn in his side for 2 years, ever since the man had started consolidating power in the eastern districts. He was ambitious, ruthless, and smart enough to be truly dangerous. Put extra security on all our operations. If he's going to make a move, it'll be in the next few days while he thinks I'm distracted. Already done. Jin-woo stood. Try to get some rest, boss. Tomorrow's going to be complicated. After Jin-woo left, Min-ho sat alone in his penthouse, the city lights stretching endlessly before him. His legs were still numb, unresponsive, exactly as they'd been for 12 years. But his mind kept replaying those moments on the stage. The feeling of his feet against the floor, the strain in his thigh muscles, the impossible joy of moving through space under his own power. And Eliana, the way she'd held him, supported him, believed in him without question. She'd looked at him and seen not the feared mafia boss or the broken man in the wheelchair, but something else entirely. Something worth saving. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m., there's a small cafe near Hangang Park. More private than the lounge. We should talk about what happened. Eliana." Min-ho stared at the message for a long time before responding. "I'll be there." He should have questioned how she got his private number. Should have been more cautious about meeting in an unsecured location. Should have listened to Jin-woo's warnings about unknown variables. But for the first time in 12 years, Min-ho wanted something more than he wanted safety. He wanted answers. He wanted to understand what had happened on that stage. And if he was honest with himself, he wanted to see Eliana again, to know if the connection he'd felt was real or just adrenaline and desperation.
Sleep didn't come easily that night.
Min-ho lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing through possibilities and impossibilities. Every few minutes, he tried to move his legs, sending the mental commands that had failed for so long. Nothing. No response. No tingling, no sensation, just the familiar numbness that had been his constant companion. But he'd felt something earlier. He knew he had. And if it happened once, maybe it could happen again. Around 3 in the morning, Min-ho's phone rang. Jin-woo's voice was tense. "We have a problem. One of our warehouses in Mapo District just got hit. Professional job. They took the whole shipment." Min-ho sat up, his mind shifting instantly into tactical mode. Casualties. 3 of our guys wounded, none dead. Whoever did this knew exactly when and where to strike. "Boss, this was Taesung. It has to be. The timing is too convenient. Lock down all our other operations. Double the guards. And find out how they knew about that shipment. Someone on our side is talking." "Already working on it." Jin-woo paused. "Boss, maybe you should cancel tomorrow. This is exactly what I was worried about. You're distracted, and our enemies are taking advantage." Min-ho thought about Eliana's message, about the cafe by the park, about the possibility that she might hold answers to questions he'd been asking for 12 years. "No," he said firmly. "Tomorrow happens. But increase my personal security detail. If Taesung wants a war, he'll get one. Just not tomorrow." After ending the call, Min-ho sat in the darkness of his bedroom, feeling the familiar weight of his responsibilities settling back onto his shoulders. The brief moment of hope, of possibility, was being crushed under the reality of his life. He was Kang Min-ho, head of Seoul's most powerful criminal organization. People depended on him for their livelihoods, their protection, their survival. His enemies were circling, smelling blood in the water. This was no time for miracles or dancing or mysterious women who made him feel things he thought dead. But even as he acknowledged all of this, even as he started planning his response to Taesung's attack, Min-ho knew he was going to that cafe tomorrow. Knew he was going to see Eliana, talk to her, try to understand what had passed between them on that stage. Because for 12 years, he'd been surviving, existing, ruling his empire from a throne of isolation and cold calculation. Tonight, for just a few minutes, he'd been alive. And now that he'd tasted that feeling again, he couldn't just let it go. The night stretched on, Min-ho caught between the demands of his dangerous world and the pull of something he didn't understand but desperately wanted to explore. Outside his windows, Seoul never slept, its lights a constant reminder of the city he controlled but could never truly touch. Tomorrow would bring consequences. Tomorrow would require answers, decisions, possibly violence. Taesung's attack was just the beginning. The other family heads would be watching, waiting to see if Min-ho was still strong enough to lead, or if tonight's display of vulnerability had revealed a fatal weakness. But tonight, in the quiet hours before dawn, Min-ho allowed himself to remember what it felt like to dance, to move, to feel the ground beneath his feet and a woman's hand in his and music in his soul. Tomorrow could bring war. Tonight, he held on to hope. His phone buzzed again. Another message from Eliana. Can't sleep either?
Keep thinking about tonight.
About you standing. About the look on your face. It was beautiful. See you tomorrow. Min-ho read the message 3 times, then set his phone aside. Beautiful. When was the last time anyone had called anything about him beautiful? He was feared, respected, obeyed. But beautiful? Only someone who didn't know what he really was could think that. The question was whether he wanted to keep her in that ignorance, let her see him as just a man who'd forgotten how to live, or whether he needed to show her the truth. That he wasn't some romantic figure waiting to be saved. He was a criminal. A killer. A man who'd built his empire on violence and intimidation. A man who, for 12 years, had been certain he'd never dance again. Until tonight. Until her. Min-ho closed his eyes, exhaustion finally pulling him towards sleep. His last conscious thought was of Eliana's smile, wild and bright and fearless, as she'd extended her hand and asked him to dance. Tomorrow, he'd find out if miracles could happen twice. Or if tonight had been nothing more than a beautiful dream he'd have to wake up from. Either way, he was going to that cafe. And whatever came after, he'd face it the way he always had. Head on, without apology, and absolutely without regret. Morning arrived with harsh sunlight cutting through Min-ho's penthouse windows and Jin-woo's face on his phone screen. Boss, we need to talk before your cafe meeting. I'm coming up. Min-ho ended the call without responding and transferred himself from bed to wheelchair with practiced efficiency. His body ached in strange places, muscles protesting from last night's impossible exertion. The pain was almost welcome, proof that what happened had been real and not some fever dream. Jin-woo arrived 15 minutes later carrying a tablet and wearing the expression of a man who hadn't slept. The videos have over 2 million views combined. The narrative is splitting 3 ways. Half think it's a miracle. A quarter think it's staged publicity for the lounge. The rest think you've been faking your paralysis for years as some kind of elaborate power play. And what do our people think? Min-ho accepted the coffee Jin-woo handed him, black and strong. They're confused but loyal. It's the family heads I'm worried about. Kim called this morning asking if you're still capable of leading. Lee wants an emergency meeting. And Taesung. Jin-woo's expression darkened. He sent a message. Said he's glad to see you're feeling better because now the playing field is level. He's escalating. Min-ho took a long drink of coffee, his mind already working through scenarios. The warehouse hit was just the beginning. He thinks I'm distracted, compromised. He's going to push harder. which is why you should cancel this cafe meeting. Let me handle Taesung while you focus on consolidating your position with the families. No, Min-ho set down his cup with controlled force. I'm going. But you're right about Taesung. He needs to understand that last night changed nothing about who I am or what I'm capable of. Jin-woo studied him for a long moment. Boss, I've known you since we were kids stealing candy from convenience stores. I've never seen you like this. Whatever happened on that stage, whoever this woman is, she's gotten under your skin. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Min-ho turned his wheelchair toward the window, looking out over Seoul's daytime sprawl. I've spent 12 years building walls, so high nothing could touch me. I'm the most powerful man in this city, and I'm completely alone. You see the problem? I see a man who's survived because of those walls, who's built something extraordinary because he didn't let emotion compromise his judgment. I've built a prison. Min-ho's voice was quiet but firm. Last night, I felt something I thought I'd lost forever. Not just my legs, Jin-woo.
Hope.
Possibility. The sense that maybe there's more to life than power and control and endless gray existence. And if this hope gets you killed, if Taesung uses your feelings for this woman against you. Min-ho turned back to face his oldest friend. Then he'll learn that loving something doesn't make me weak. It makes me more dangerous than I've ever been. Because now I have something to protect beyond just territory and reputation. Jin-woo sighed but nodded.
Fine.
But I'm tripling your security detail for the cafe meeting. And I'm having the place swept for weapons and surveillance beforehand. Acceptable. Min-ho checked his watch. 4 hours until he'd see Eliana again. 4 hours to handle business and prepare for whatever came next. What else? The doctors sent their preliminary report. They want you in for a full MRI today, extensive neurological testing. They're calling what happened last night a possible temporary restoration of neural pathways, but they can't explain the mechanism. They want to study you. Schedule it for next week. Today I have other priorities. Boss. Next week, Jin-woo. The medical mysteries can wait. Right now I need to show strength, not spend the day in a hospital getting scanned like a lab rat. Jin-woo reluctantly agreed and left to arrange the security details. Alone again, Min-ho allowed himself a moment of vulnerability, reaching down to grip his thigh with both hands. He closed his eyes and tried to summon that feeling from last night, that electric awareness of his lower body waking up. Nothing. Just dead weight and numb flesh. But he'd felt it once. The sensation had been real, undeniable, which meant either he was experiencing some kind of progressive neurological recovery or something about Eliana, about the music, about that specific moment had triggered a response his body shouldn't be capable of. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, just 3 words. Enjoying your miracle? Min-ho stared at the message, ice forming in his chest. Someone was watching, someone who knew exactly how to needle him. Taesung, almost certainly, though the man rarely did his own dirty work. He deleted the message without responding. Let them play their games. He had more important things to focus on. The next 3 hours passed in a blur of phone calls and strategic planning. Min-ho spoke with each of the family heads personally, his voice calm and authoritative, making it clear that last night's events changed nothing about his position or power. He approved retaliatory measures against Taesung's operations, careful strikes designed to send a message without triggering open war. By 1:30, he was in the back of his Mercedes with 4 guards in a trailing vehicle. The cafe Eliana had chosen was small and tasteful, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood near Honggang Park. Jin-woo's team had already swept it twice and positioned 2 guards in civilian clothes at nearby tables. Remember, Jin-woo said from the front seat. 1 hour maximum. Any longer and the security risks increase exponentially. Understood. Min-ho's heart was beating faster than it should, nervous energy he hadn't felt in years. He was about to see her again, This impossible woman who'd grabbed his wheelchair and changed his life in the span of a song. The cafe was nearly empty when they arrived. Min-ho's driver helped him out of the car and into the wheelchair, then retreated to a respectful distance. Through the cafe's large windows, he could see Eliana already seated at a corner table, wearing jeans and a simple white blouse that somehow made her even more beautiful than the silver dress had. She saw him and smiled, that same wild, fearless expression that had first captured his attention. Min-ho rolled through the door, and suddenly the guards and the danger and the empire all faded into background noise. "You came," Eliana said as he approached, standing to greet him. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "Honestly, I wasn't sure. Last night was intense. I thought maybe in the light of day you'd decide I was crazy and dangerous and best avoided." She sat back down as he positioned his wheelchair across from her. "You are crazy and dangerous," Min-ho said. "That's not necessarily a deterrent." Eliana laughed, the sound bright and genuine. "Fair enough. I ordered you coffee. Black, no sugar. Jinwoo told me that's how you take it when I asked." "You talked to Jinwoo?" Min-ho raised an eyebrow. "I texted him this morning to make sure this meeting was actually okay and not going to get me killed. He was very professional and very clear about the fact that hurting you in any way would result in extremely unpleasant consequences for me. He's protective. He's terrifying." Eliana's expression grew more serious. "Min-ho, I need to understand what happened last night. I've been dancing my whole life, and I've never seen anything like that. You stood up. You walked. The doctors said you couldn't, but you did." Min-ho took a slow sip of coffee, studying her face. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept much either, but her eyes were bright with curiosity and something else. Concern, maybe, or hope. "I don't know what happened," he admitted. "The doctors examined me afterward. They found some unusual nerve activity, but no explanation for how I stood or why my legs work now about as well as they did yesterday. Which is to say, not at all." Eliana's face fell. "So it was temporary. Just that one moment." "Apparently." Min-ho set down his cup. "But it was real. I felt everything. The floor under my feet, my muscles working, the balance required to stay upright. For 12 years I've been told that was impossible, and then you grabbed my wheelchair and proved everyone wrong. I didn't do anything special. I just asked you to dance. No one has asked me that in 12 years. No one has looked at me and seen past the wheelchair to the person trapped inside it." Min-ho's voice was rough with emotion he usually kept buried. "You saw me, Eliana. Really saw me. And somehow that made the impossible possible." She reached across the table and took his hand, her touch warm and grounding. "Tell me what happened. The shooting, the injury, all of it. I need to understand."
Min-ho hesitated.
He never talked about that night, not in detail, not to anyone. But something about Eliana's directness, her willingness to see him completely, made the words come easier. 12 years ago, I was 28 and thought I was invincible. I'd just taken over my father's organization, made some aggressive moves to expand our territory. I had enemies, but I didn't take them seriously enough. One night, I was leaving a club in Itaewon, 3 in the morning, thought I was safe because I had guards. He paused, the memories still sharp after all these years. They came out of nowhere. For shooters with automatic weapons. My guards returned fire, but I was already down. The bullet entered my lower back and severed my spinal cord completely. Or so every doctor has told me since. "But it couldn't have been complete if you walked last night," Eliana said softly. "That's what doesn't make sense. I've had every test available. MRIs, CT scans, nerve conduction studies. They all show the same thing. Complete severance at the L1 vertebra with no possibility of recovery. I've accepted that diagnosis for 12 years. Until last night. Min-ho's grip tightened on her hand. "When you asked me to dance, something changed. I felt this warmth spreading through my spine, like ice melting. Then my legs just woke up. It was the most terrifying and beautiful thing I've ever experienced. Eliana was quiet for a moment, processing. Can I ask you something personal? You've already grabbed my wheelchair and dragged me on stage. I think we're past worrying about personal boundaries. She smiled at that but grew serious again quickly. Before the shooting, when you used to dance, what did it feel like? Not physically, but emotionally. What did dancing mean to you?
Min-ho had to think about that.
No one had ever asked him that question. Freedom, he said finally. Everything else in my life was about control, strategy, maintaining power. But when I danced, I could let all that go. The music would move through me, and for those few minutes I wasn't the boss or the heir or the weapon. I was just a man moving to music, completely free. And after the shooting, I became exactly what I was running from. All control, all strategy, no freedom at all. I built my empire bigger and stronger, but I killed the part of me that danced.
It was easier that way.
Can't miss what you've buried. Except you can, Eliana said gently. You can bury things so deep you forget they're there, but they don't die. They just wait. And last night, when I asked you to dance, that buried part of you woke up. Not just metaphorically. Your body remembered what it felt like to be free, and for a few minutes, it found a way. You think my paralysis is psychological? Min-ho's voice sharpened. That I've been in this wheelchair for 12 years because of trauma or repression or some kind of mental block. No, Eliana squeezed his hand. I think your injury is real. But I also think the human body and mind are more connected than doctors understand. You've spent 12 years convincing yourself you'll never walk again, building your entire identity around being the man in the wheelchair. What if part of you needed to believe that? What if staying paralyzed was safer than risking hope and disappointment? The words hit Min-ho like a physical blow because they resonated with a truth he'd never admitted to himself. After the shooting, after months of surgeries and failed treatments, he'd made a choice. He decided to stop hoping, stop trying, stop dreaming of recovery. It had been a survival mechanism, a way to move forward instead of staying trapped in endless disappointment. But what if that choice had consequences beyond the psychological? What if his absolute certainty that he'd never walk again had somehow reinforced the physical reality? That's insane, he said, but without conviction. Is it? Last night, for the first time in 12 years, you wanted to dance more than you wanted to be safe. You wanted to feel alive more than you wanted to protect yourself from disappointment. And your body responded. So, what are you suggesting? That I just need to believe hard enough, and I'll magically walk again? No, Eliana's voice was firm. I'm suggesting that maybe the barrier isn't just physical. Maybe there's a psychological component that's been reinforcing the injury. And maybe, with the right circumstances, your body can overcome that barrier. Thank you so much for watching this story. If Min-ho and Eliana's journey touched your heart, please don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and leave a comment below. Your support truly means everything and helps this channel keep bringing you powerful stories like this. And don't go anywhere. Part 2 is coming very soon. The next chapter of Min-ho and Eliana's story will take you even deeper, with bigger challenges, deeper emotions, and life-changing decisions that will surprise you. So make sure your notifications are on, because you won't want to miss what happens next. Thank you for being part of this journey. Watch out for Part 2.